Hello, viewers and listeners, to another episode of the Nigerian Space. My name is Ife, and I'll be standing in for Diola for today. We'll be continuing last week's episode, which is investment and career opportunities both home and abroad. And we had no choice but to bring back our wonderful guest, Mr. Olushola Amoson. And also, we do have Mr. Constance. So, Mr. Olushola, how's it going?
Fantastic. Thank you for inviting me once again. It was indeed a very exciting time the last week, the last time we had this discourse. And once again, I'm happy to be back here.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, it was very, very insightful and educative. So, I learned a lot. So, I'm sure our viewers and our listeners too did. Mr. Constance, how is it going? For you.
Everything is going on well. We got good feedback last week, and we have this demand that Shola should continue since he couldn't finish last week, and everything has been going on well. We've heard from the powerful election in Edo State as well. So we're ready for another week. Thank you, Shola, for coming back on with us.
Totally my pleasure. I mean, these issues remain to, everyone, whether you're home or you're abroad, like we want to find how does economic value move in our direction, So, without further ado, I think we should get to it, isn't it?
Yes, let's the floor is all yours, Mr. Shola.
So we were discussing in the previous edition about how to identify wealth pathways. And we said that if we could think about the Maslow's pyramid of needs, particularly for those who are trying to run businesses in Nigeria, you would see that most of our billionaires, apart from those who maybe you can't find out where to attribute where their wealth came from, most of them got their money from serving basic human needs like food, clothing, and shelter for the nearly 200 million people who are in Nigeria. So economic value, will always flow in the direction of those who are able to create that kind of wealth, who are able to find out what are people really looking for, what are they trying to, they must eat, they must drink water, they must buy medicine, they must, wear shoes, they must, go to school, and they must move around. So once you design something like that, and we took Lagos as an example, that about 22 million people in the city of Lagos alone, and for that city, people have to drink water, people have to use medicine, people have to buy gas, people have to do all kinds of things. So you need to think about whether it's automotive gas or automobile gas, which is petrol in Nigeria, or it is the domestic gas, which is usually referred to as gas. People will always consume all of these things, and you need to find out how to be able to plug into that. So I also wanted to really talk about the opportunity around the skills gap, which was what we found, and we built a very solid business model around it. And I see many other people trying to do the same as well. So the universities, as I said in the previous edition, the universities couldn't do much, or the university aren't still able to do much. I mean, they've been on strike for several months now, despite the fact that COVID-19 is going on. I hear that ASU is saying that no e-learning, because they don't want the government to take advantage of them. But I mean, it's still a myopic thing to say that because you're on strike and there's COVID, and so students should just miss the entire academic year. So, but that deficiency provides a massive opportunity for anybody who is providing supplementary education, alternative education, or professional development as an opportunity for you to be able to help several thousands of people whose university degrees cannot land them a good job. So they're certain that the university degrees can land them a good job. And the best thing you can do as an entrepreneur is to find what are those in-demand skills that the universities are not teaching, and find a way to plug into them. So that's what we did back in 2018. We dabbled a little into my history as far as FUTA and Akure is concerned, and how I've had the experience of running trainings on campus and all of that. And then I moved on to join Microsoft just about a year after I left college. And then I started training as well at Microsoft, working with thousands of youths across the country, trying to drive the Microsoft narrative and Microsoft curriculum. So that gave me a lot of insight into what skills people are actually looking for, what the university wasn't still providing. And I realized it wasn't just the university I graduated from, it was also all the universities across Nigeria. Only a few universities are really what they assault, in terms of that all-round, component. The ones that were doing well in technical were not doing enough in soft skills. The ones that are doing well in soft skills are just dressing really fine and their engineering is really whack. So, we started looking for new opportunities, and that's when we started CovenWorks. And we started training, people and getting them to be aware of new opportunities around data science and artificial intelligence. And now, about 3 years later, we have close to 3,000 people in our alumni network who have come into our program either through self-pay, or they were sponsored by one international government agency or not. So my background in philanthropies at Microsoft enabled me to be able to find out where the opportunities are, how to create public-private partnerships, how to get international development organizations to fund, people to attend your program. The way you are financially in the USA, where if you set up a school right now, you're certain that you succeed because they will either tap into their federal government financial aid or they will find some credit card company that can fund their education. In the same way, Nigeria, we don't have all of that going on, but there are international aid organizations like USAID, the United Nations, the World Bank, GIZ, and these are all organizations we have partnered with at one point or the other to be able to advance their own agenda, which is making sure that people are skilled on the African continent, for several other reasons. And then we then go home smiling as well because these organizations will pay the tuition of our students to be able to attend our program. So anybody who, after we started and people saw that it was profitable, 3, 4, 5 organizations also got into the space and they're doing remarkably well. And I still keep saying that the skills gap in Nigeria is still very huge and it represents a unique opportunity for anyone who is considering going home to go and drive skills program. It's a profitable business. If you find out and analyze, let's take technology, for example, because whenever I talk about skills gap, people assume it's only technology. But let's say we want to talk about technology, for example. Cybersecurity is a huge, huge space that up to now in Nigeria, there's still not enough organizations that are driving it. I have a friend whose foundation is driving that, and the US government just funded them recently to be able to drive awareness on online safety. That is a huge gap that exists. Our company is also trying to create a course very soon with some university faculty members to drive that kind of thing. So cybersecurity is still a blue ocean. Cloud technologies, AWS, Azure, GCP, massive opportunity. You will set up a company that is training people on this, whether from college to become hired by the industry or retraining people who are already in the industry. You'll be amazed. People will pay for it, but more importantly, government and international development organizations will pay in bulk for you to train thousands of their young people. So there is a huge opportunity there, particularly for those who have spent 10, 15 years maybe in the IT space here, to be able to do that. But there is a way to go about it as well. So that's cloud, there's AI, there's data science, and across all of those spectrum like that, once you have the statistics, you're able to pull out and indeed a report on DICE or on Monster on how many jobs are around the world that are not yet being filled and how the skills are in demand, and you sell it as a value proposition and your curriculum is tight, people are definitely going to want to do it. And it's not just about tech. So you think about even other things like middle skills gap, like things like artisans, like plumbers, like tilers, like all of that. If you set up something around that as well, because it's a country that is really interested in sophistication. Our people are very sophisticated people. We're probably some of the most sophisticated people in the world from the standpoint of the ones that are educated and all of that. We're even more sophisticated than many Americans, as you know. Because we take from a variety of cultures, from Europe, from the Middle East, from all of that. Our taste in architecture, our taste in food, our taste in, just enjoying life is remarkable. And as a result, it's providing a huge opportunity for anyone who wants to invest back home to see that the skills gap remains a very important opportunity. So those were two things I didn't have enough time to elaborate on in the previous session. And I think a little to some extent, except of course, if you have some more questions or people have questions, I've been able to elaborate on those ones from a setup standpoint. I'm talking about what I have touched, what I have handled, what I am still doing, like what I am confident of that in a year you could be like, setting up a tiny little business that is already turning over 100,000, 200,000 in a year, simply because you're focusing on the skills gap and you're trying to help people to feel that opportunity. So that's really profound, I would say. And I found it, and I share with people all the time. They're like, oh, this is really interesting, and I hope more people can get into that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Olushola. So for all our viewers, if you have any questions for him, please feel free to shoot us the question or your concerns in the comments, and we'll go ahead and address it for Mr. Olushola. I do have a question for you. Two questions, actually. So the first one, as a Nigerian in the diaspora, either US, Europe, if you are caught in the system where, for example, you're not making these 6 figures and above, and you have a passion to either go back or invest, how do you go about that? And that's why I use the clause caught in the system, where you're just living, you're paying bills, you have small savings, you're not earning, the crazy amounts that many people earn. And you're saying, okay, I would love to do this back home in Nigeria. This is my passion. How do you go about it? And because a lot of people say, if you apply for this grant, you get it. Not everyone knows about either the grants, and there's this phobia like, oh, because I'm Black, I'll most likely not get it. So what, in a nutshell, how can that be addressed, actually?
What I realized is that we very often underestimate the power of the US dollar and the money that we call just trying to get by. We call that money the money we're just trying to use to get by. But think about it, like to rent an entire training center in a whole year, is just about $8,000. $8,000, like just to pay rental for a space for a whole year. You can't get that here in the States. Like, you can't. I'm talking about a really large space that can sit like 200 to 300 people. So that's an example. So if you're caught in that kind of system where you're busy trying to get things rolling here and all of that, and you still want to be able to invest back home in this area that I've talked about, which is the skills area, you first need to just think about how to set up a successful pilot. And that pilot might not involve getting your own space, renting your own space, building your own. You see, there are hundreds of hubs across Nigeria that you can access through a network called the ISN, which is like the Association of Hub Owners across Nigeria. These hubs are in Owerri, they're in Ibadan, they're in Abeokuta, they're in Lagos, they're in Abuja, they're in Akure. All of them are registered together, and they're always looking for international people or people, Nigerians in diaspora, Americans, all of that, who have the knowledge and who want to try out a program within their facility. It will just require you to pay a very small token. When I mean a token, I mean like you could be pulling off just the space rental for a 2-3 days program with less than $500. Okay. And then you go in there and you start this pilot program to test what you're trying to do. I'll give you an example of a friend of mine who works in Facebook, and he's really had this interest to train people on data center management and all of that. And he's been talking about the fact that all he just needs is to come to Nigeria for a few days or for a few weeks and just set up, a pilot, because that pilot is what you need. Organizations that will fund, that will provide grants, always are looking for those kind of pilots, because that's where you can demonstrate the results of what you have, what you think is going to work. But the pilot also enables you to be able to see what actually works. You're able to know, okay, this was how people embraced this particular skill, or this is how they did not embrace it. So that is really, really important. So I would say that if you are caught in that, and you're still trying to look for how to get grants and all of that, the best way to start is start with a pilot. Make it a partnership with an organization in Nigeria. Make it a partnership with a hub in Nigeria that is already doing well. Make it a partnership with a group in Nigeria that already have the audience. And then you take the tidbits from that, the photos, the videos, the articles, the newsletters from there, and then you show it and show a more comprehensive plan to your partners, to your funding partners, on what exactly you're trying to do. There are also organizations in Nigeria or funding that are available to Nigerian programs, but that have not found people who have the capacity. I'll give you examples. There are fundings with the World Bank. For example, I sat with one of the education directors for the World Bank for Nigeria a few months ago, and he was telling me how difficult it is to find people who can actually write out the terms of reference for a project. they want to run this project, but they can't show him in very clear empirical terms how all of the parts are going to play, how everything is going to fit together. They just talk about training. They don't talk about job placements. They don't talk about how these people, they don't talk about monitoring and evaluation. They don't talk about stakeholder partnerships. They don't talk about that. So he just felt like, who made these guys non-profits? Who made these guys business?
So that
time, according to what he told me, because this is a capacity issue, and because the next question someone might ask me is, why didn't you pursue that? But it's really a question of bandwidth. There's only much you can do at once, you know. But he was telling me at the time that they had about $1.3 million for each technical school in Nigeria, for each any university any technical college of education that was in Nigeria, about $1.3 million apportioned for the World Bank for that fiscal that had not been taken advantage of. And all they need is an organization who can work with the Ministry of Education to draw up the terms of reference, because it's the ministry that is going to request for that money. It's the government that will request for that money. But if the government can't come with the documentation, and many of the people who sit in those government offices don't have the capacity at all to be able to draw up those terms of reference. And from an ethical standpoint, he can't possibly, because he's a Nigerian, draw it up, give it to them, and ask them to submit it back to him. You know, he can't possibly do that, right? So he was telling us, hey, because I was still in Microsoft, say you work in Microsoft. You now can't also, because you're a corporate entity in Nigeria, you can't possibly receive this money on behalf of the government of Nigeria. There has to be a middle entity that is maybe a non-profit organization or a for-profit organization or a consultant that can draw up this proposal that identifies all of these different parts together. When he told me about this project, he mentioned that it was a multi-year effort. So anybody watching this right now literally can actually go find out about this World Bank Technical Education funding, because it's available. That's an example. But so where I'm going to is that people who are here, who have done 10 years of like maybe corporate America, who understand how all of these things are done, and are Nigerians, stand a better chance to be able to take advantage of this kind of things, because their education is intact, their exposure is intact, they understand like what it means to do the monitoring and evaluation, hopefully, and so on and so forth. So that provides a serious opportunity. But who is going to create the bridge? Who is going to show someone who is here what is available back home? Who is going to be able to show them that, look, it's not all doom. There are huge opportunities back home, and they're really looking for people who have the capacity to deliver on those things. The second answer to your question will be from the career angle of things. Many people who work in America are not aware that there are career opportunities that pay as much as you can earn in America as well back home in Nigeria. And I keep telling people, particularly for those who want to give it a shot, to try it out for like the next 3, 4, 5 years, depending on how much resilience or endurance they have. And I say resilience because all of us know that it's not just about how much you earn. It's also about the peace of mind. It's also about all of those other standard of living conversations, you know, that you don't have to worry about here in the United States or anywhere else in the West. But I have worked in a company where people actually left their jobs in the States, came to Nigeria to work, and they were earning the same equivalent of what they will be earning in the States. Of course, how they spent it will be different. They will have to worry about generator, inverters, traffic, servicing their cars more than usual and all of that. But there are expat opportunities back home as well. They are looking for Africans in diaspora who have had the qualifying education and who want to move back to Africa, not just to Nigeria, to Kenya, to South Africa, to Rwanda, to Zimbabwe, to come and head companies, to come and become head of sales, because number one, they have the international experience, but also they have the skin color, they have the local vibe, they know the people, hopefully they still have their accent intact and all of that. So they can, you know, in both ways from a language standpoint, you know, and they can speak Pidgin, but also when it's time to like sit in front of a customer. I know that when I was in Microsoft, and this is just an example, and I hope it's really understood. I know that many of us who were just like the regular English-speaking guys who didn't go study abroad, who didn't study in the UK or in the US, we were doing okay. But the guys who came back home who had like, maybe they even just lived 6 months in the US, but who were able to like, you know, talk in a certain way.
Switch it up.
When we went to events, when we went to parties, when we went to business meetings, like literally, they would get asked, they would get more attention. The guy, you will know that the guy is focusing on them because we love sophistication as a people. So there is a huge market right there for people who want to move back home. There's this website that I found about 3 years ago called Move Me Back. So in case there are people who are just trying to move back for a bit, that website is called movemeback.com. And it's a really, really good website. It shows you all of the roles that are available in MTN South Africa, available in like several companies, IHS Towers, some of the Google, all of these companies that are in Africa that are hiring people who want to move back home. And I think that will be a valuable resource for a lot of people. You simply create your resume on it, and then they reach out to you, and then you talk to those people. You're like, oh, where are you moving back from? And all of that. And that really, really works. There's also this group that I joined as well called Internations while I was back home in Nigeria. Internations is a global network, but it's fabulous for anybody who is considering moving back to Africa. So between 6 months to 1 year of you still being planning to go back home, you need to join Internations, because once you are back, it gives you that expat community of not just Nigerians, but also Americans, Europeans who work in Nigeria as expats. And that expat community in Nigeria is actually huge. I assure you. They have their own Facebook groups. They have their own LinkedIn groups. They buy things from each other. You want to rent a house. Someone is moving out. You can move in. These are things that can ease your entrance back. It's not all sloppy. It's not all boring. It's not all difficult. That, hey, I want to get the house in the Nigeria. No, you'll find people who understand your language as well. In case you've lost touch with home for so long and you're watching this and you're like, I don't want to get back into that mix. No, you would meet people online who understand your language, who understand your vibe, and that as well is going to help you as you're trying to transition back into that your career. So I thought I should chip that in as an answer to your question as well.
Thank you, Lushola. I have a question about, we know that Lagos is easy. When you train people, you can easily get them fixed up with one company or the other. Also, I want to ask for the likes of people in the intercities, like Ondo, Osun, other states. Edo State, exactly. So where you train people, you can't leave them in vacuum. Do you need to get them engaged? So what happened? Do you train them, get them jobs, or how do you place them with the skills that they learn?
Awesome. So as far as our own work is concerned, what we do is that we follow the entire value chain. So we're not doing the training because we just want to train them. We're training them because we have an outcome in mind. So what we typically do is that we run an outsourcing company, and I have a feeling you know the answer to this question already, but you want more people who are watching learn about it. So we run outsourcing both locally and internationally. We find jobs for people outside Nigeria and within Nigeria, and we connect them to those companies who are looking to either make cost savings or are just looking to increase the diversity on their teams. All right, so it's as straightforward as that. We connect them to internship opportunities. We worked with about 80 companies recently to place at least one intern. That's in partnership with the German government after training them on data science and AI. So we are consistently finding new roles, new opportunities, connecting them to competitions, challenges on Kaggle, and all of those other platforms that data scientists use. So regardless of where they are, I work in underserved communities. I just decided to talk about like a Lagos boy for a moment, but I work in underserved communities, and that's in Edo. Edo is like, interestingly, Edo is in the news now, but Edo, we have a center in Edo. We partner with the current administration, who luckily, or not even luckily, it deserves it, and it's back on the reel again, And so we hope that we're able to continue the work that we're doing with them. But we Edo committed, and we planned, and we added a memorandum of understanding to train 1,000 of their young people on data science and AI. They became the first government in Nigeria to make that commitment. It's different from, we are supporting this initiative here. No, they decided to bankroll it entirely. They set up a center that cost them about 100 million naira to set up. And it's not just that those kind of centers they set up and lock. No, they put a lady that has a head on her shoulders. They put her as the executive director of that program, and they're monitoring it. You know what they did after 6 to 10 months? They stopped spending government money. They now went out to look for international partners, GIZ, World Bank, Amazon. All of these guys are bringing money to Edo State to do this, to do the same thing.
Wow.
Though our effort is more commercial, our setup is owned by us and set up by us. We have some encouraging, relationship with the government in that at some point they provided collective power. That's just alternative power with the generator to a number of the organizations that are partnering together to work there. But other governments should really emulate like what Edo has done in that sense, because you need that kind of encouragement that, okay, when you are doing this, why am I not in Lagos with CC Hub and the other guys where I can meet, where I can meet the founder of Twitter and I can meet the founder of Facebook whenever they're in town? Why am I in a community that is just emerging? One, because I'm passionate about those young people. I know that talent is evenly distributed. And if nobody created that opportunity for me, I won't even find myself in Microsoft in Lagos. So why don't I pay forward and create that kind of opportunity for those kind of people as well? Do you know what shocked me, sir? When I found out that Dun and Bradstreet, the US one, hired some young people from our training. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, it was so encouraging. It was so encouraging because I felt like these guys would not have had this opportunity if we didn't set up that space. So we're looking for all those kind of partnerships, the more of them across the country. We believe that recently we also had a partnership with a company from out of Colorado that was doing data gathering. They were doing this huge project, the kind that leads to the finding your origin, this kind of DNA idea for $200. They've wanted me to stop saying you guys. I've moved here over a year now, and I still keep saying you guys.
Because you still feel the vibe from home.
Gathering 4 million names in the Ekiti State to just basically help them determine what their origins are. And people who have left home several years ago can remember and find out what their family tree actually looks like. So, and this is working and this is working with local youth who have learned about data science, about data analysis. So that's really what our value chain looks like, and we are consistently trying to expand that work as well.
So, Shola, I believe that you have some networks here too. You know that a couple of people also have links here. So how can we leverage, people here who want to do things back home? They don't want to replicate what you're replicating. You already have your student, but looking for opportunity to get them engaged. So how can we work together? If you understand that question,
Yes, I believe I do. The first part of it is that as I mentioned earlier, there are other areas in this in-demand skills spectrum. So if you say Shola is already doing data and AI, what about, as I said, cybersecurity? What about cloud? What about blockchain? What about, so all of those areas are still areas that one can set up a program. And I didn't stumble on our methods. I learned it over a decade. So I'm able to help people to replicate the exact same thing along what they want to do. Now, for those who really just want to partner with what we are doing, one of the entry points that I've seen is that many of you work in companies that are already offshore. They hire people from Serbia, from Ukraine, from India, and those people don't live in the United States. Why don't you advocate within those companies that you are certain that there are organizations that have the same standards or even better back home in Africa, who you can facilitate a partnership that ensures that those guys can get jobs? You're doing two things by doing that. First, you are helping that company to become more diverse, maybe to even make some cost savings. But more importantly, you're making a mark in that you're getting many of our guys back home. And this is what Indians do. This is what many of the Asians do. They don't care whether they know your father's name or something. Once they remember that this is where you're from, they facilitate that opening. I don't see much of it from Africans. So if we can do that, that is going to be achieving a lot, helping those people. And also from a commercial standpoint, if you're somebody who you're not just a career person in the United States here, you're an entrepreneur and you have those kind of links, we have all kind of commercial arrangements that can make sure that, because we are like a labor broker, essentially. We get paid to pay the talents on the continent. We pay competitively well, and then we make our own margin as well. And so for anybody who's considering doing business with that, they can work with us as well, and we figure out a commercial arrangement for them as well. So those are some of the ways that we can partner. But I'm looking at You know, earlier this year, I worked with a company, I consulted for a company that basically wanted to go set up an engineering team in India and Nigeria at the same time. You know, and they're owned by Nigerians, but they're doing exceedingly well. And they hired me to basically take a look at their process and make sure that everything is working out fine so they can get the hiring done. So there are companies who don't hire through us, but who need our advisory services to be able to get it right with finding the right talent, what universities to work with. My last 4 months at Microsoft as well, I was very instrumental to the setting up of the African Development Center for Microsoft, because many of the people who wanted to do college hires, the vice presidents who were in charge of college hires, had a lot of questions to ask us, you know, and I facilitated a number of developer meetups, you know, to make sure that they meet the right talent. So if Indeed, I learned Indeed just went to Lagos and they're setting up a team, and a bunch of our friends who helped them to set up. If you know of a company, maybe Airbnb wants to move to Lagos, or Boeing wants to do something in Lagos, or AT&T wants to set up a development team, the way they have offshore, you know, I hear that when you get to some parts of Bangalore or of New Delhi, you will get there and you see Bank of America, you see a tall building that's branded Bank of America. You'd be like, what's going on here? You know, that's how committed those guys are to offshoring. So if you know some of those kind of things, we can set up BPOs, business process outsourcing processes that can facilitate those kind of things. So we will need to take this offline beyond this session and do it like a think tank on maybe jobs in Africa or opportunities for outsourcing from Africa and all of that. And I am definitely happy to be on that kind of forum.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Olushola. Let me ask you this now. What would be your advice for someone who is trying to take a new industry? Something like, you know, you mentioned cybersecurity. Those are things that, you know, a little bit here and there in Africa and Nigeria, they're starting to do. But let's say it's a total new industry that is popular in the West and is little or non-existent in Nigeria. And I'll use a perfect example for you. I don't know if you've heard of esports. Esports is a $2 billion industry, you know,
That's right.
competitively, and it's little or nothing in Nigeria. Most people are just the whole gaming centers and you know, just playing games among themselves. But how would you now say, okay, I want to take this model, or I want to reach out to XYZ, for example, like Microsoft now, and say, hey, there's a gaming culture in Nigeria already, and there's a need for you guys to actually look at that country because, you know, statistics is showing that you have X millions of people that play games.
Wow. So that's a very interesting point. We took the vice president of one of the VPs at Microsoft. He was VP for Xbox at the time. I think Alex Kipman, you know, if I got that title right. But we took Alex Kipman and a couple of guys to Computer Village, and they just saw how many vendors are selling PS4, for example. And, you know, Microsoft makes the Xbox, and they saw how many people are selling PS4 in Computer Village, and they were blown away. They were blown away because these were not PS4 stores. These were individual entrepreneurs who spent hundreds of millions to bring in the products every year. Unlike what you have in the US here, like you can't just go and buy 40,000 pieces of Xbox and be selling with your own cash. That's what people do in Nigeria.
Yeah.
In Nigeria, so they thought they would see PS4 store like the way you have Apple Store, Xbox Store. They didn't see that. They just saw a bunch of hustlers who had spent their own money to buy these products and all of that. And then they saw several. The second parallel that they saw was that they saw several betting centers all across the country. And they were wondering that in all of these betting centers, they are using a certain console. There's a console there. And they were wondering why that console couldn't be the Xbox console, for example. You know, across those betting centers, having that as a console. So, I mean, so when you talk about esports, I believe it's a very, very viable space. And there are two advice that I may have. It's not like, because it's not my space. So two that I may have is, number one, never underestimate the local network. Want to drive that kind of thing. Like, you need some wisdom from Baba Jebu and from all the other guys that are
even from the telecoms industry. Some people underestimated Nigeria then.
Estimate them, because you're going to go the exact way you came if you underestimate them. So you want to go and entrench yourself locally into all of those guys. And the second principle is pilot. Never carry $5 million and just pump it in. Bwah, no. Do a pilot, do a test, see if it works, expand from there. Nobody ever fails big time by just doing a pilot. Never. Like, because you just put, it's just like an experiment. You're not like going to go and borrow money with everything that that you have, to get it done. So, but I feel, just as you have said, in different angles of it, if it's from the development, that's the building of the games, to the actual consumption, which is the playing of the games, to actual maybe all of those franchise, what do you call it, merchandising and all of that. In the way the soccer, industry and fanship in quotes has been in Nigeria, non-coordinated, non-commercial, just entertainment. In the same way, there is a huge potential for esports that if we can commercialize right from the onset, from the beginning, and connect it with all those other things like betting and the other networks and telcos, because you need telcos to be able to like help you facilitate. They have like they probably have the best databases. Their databases are bigger than that of the banks right now. So after telcos, is actually the banks that are the next. Even the Nigerian government comes to number 3. The Nigerian government doesn't have as much data as any of those two companies because not enough people register to vote, not enough people have their national identification. So they're more busy right now, I think, than even national cards, which is really sad. So yeah, so those are some of my thoughts. The first one is never underestimate the local players, and also pilot.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Constance, do you have any questions for Mr. Olushola?
Yes, I want to ask, I know for major part of what we're discussing, we're looking at training people, this, giving them skills that they can match up with internationally. But if we're looking inward, are there things we can do with these skills, building some solutions to, local problems, and finding a way around it and making it work without depending on government and, how the hassles, with the government is.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a few examples, as you may know, just like Paystack and all of those guys. They went against the establishment. They looked at how InterSwitch and all the other guys have been having a few days for the past 10 years, and they were like, this is not supposed to be. First, these guys are covering everybody. Number two, they're not. And competition always brings enough options. So there are definitely, what I would say is, when you see any unicorn product in the Nigerian sense of unicorn, not that they've made $1 billion, but in the Nigerian sense of unicorn, whenever you see a project like Paystack, a project like Flutterwave, that's a fintech. But whenever you see, Kudi.ai, or you see the Cast 45 and all of that, just realize that there is a really huge opportunity to be able to take all of this across other parts of Nigeria. Because with Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, the development is spreading across Nigeria now from a digital standpoint. So the wokeness, Google made a commitment about 2 years ago to train 1 million people on data skills. So wokeness is spreading across the country. What does that mean? It means that if you have the opportunity to invest in a taxi hailing app or a ride hailing app in Akure, don't say it's not in Lagos. If you have the opportunity to invest in a ride-hailing app in Akwa Ibom, in Uyo, don't say it's not Lagos, because all of those guys are building their micro markets and there are opportunities in those places as well. If you have a mobile app that has 3 million users, it won't matter whether it's in Lagos or in Ibadan or anywhere else. And that's why you see the proliferation of investment apps all over the place right now, from Crowdivest to Cowrywise to all of those apps that are coming all over asking people to come and piggyvest, to come and save money with their kind of fill a void that the banks have not been able to fill, and they're also providing new commercial opportunities for themselves. So there are definitely opportunities with software as a service in Nigeria. Your goal first is acquiring users, not the profit, but to succeed with user acquisition over a period of time, the profits will definitely begin to roll in. We are a country where if you launch an app today, you can get 5,000 people to sign up and download. All you need to do is to go to 3 NYSC camps. Essentially, Nigeria has a lot of places to aggregate people like that. If you are with Redemption Camp alone, you can get 100,000 downloads just by partnering with Redemption Camp. So Nigeria already has a way to aggregate people like that, and we're people that, luckily for us, we listen to leaders and influencers a lot. It might be a disadvantage because it seems like we don't have a mind of our own. But that disadvantage can be used to an advantage when it comes to gathering user base for products, for services, for solutions, because you just need one pastor to announce, and that day you have 1,000 downloads. And many of the that fund startups or fund apps and fund platforms like that, they want to see that you have a user base first. So that's really the first thing I would chase if I was setting up a platform. I would chase how many users can we garner in the first 6 months, then how many paying users can we garner from there, and also think about the poverty index of Nigeria and use that in designing what the price point should be. Whenever something is more than 100 naira, it's a problem for many Nigerians. If you can't access it if you can access that service with 100 naira and below, just know that that's for the elites. All right, and so carry your business and take it towards Victoria Island, towards GRA, towards all of those places. But if you want to do something that will go viral across Nigeria, make sure the barrier to entry is so low. It doesn't mean you won't have other products that are high selling, but make sure people can afford it with 100 naira to be part of it, and they can, boast that they have that as well. So that would be my thoughts around that.
Okay, thank you. We do have a few comments here. So Adeola said, does Mr. Shola have consulting services? And he said, can he be consulted to help set up a business back in Africa? Also for a startup, would he advise to go the route of consulting or try doing it yourself?
So for a startup, you see, anytime you try to dabbling always results in mistakes, burns, all of that. Just this session we've had here today, this past hour, just discussing, and Mr. Constant asking me questions that I am certain he knows the answer to, but he just wants us to be able to educate all the people that are watching us. Just having this 1 hour alone helps us to be able to address some things, and I'm sure Mr. Adeola can see that as well. So I will always advise the point of consulting. If you can't get it, if you don't want to do it as a paid consulting, do a lot of time just listening to people's advice. Like, just speak to as many people that you think are at that level as possible. You can speak to about who have had past experiences, reach out to them on LinkedIn and all of that. But yes, I do offer consulting services. I actually run clarity sessions and coaching programs and set up, ways to help people to be able to get those kind of things done, and they are mostly paid. So definitely, as a startup, particularly if you are not in your 20s, you have very little room for error. So you want to make sure that you get it right as soon as you can. There will still be a few mistakes, but you are not at that point where you can be experimenting up and down. I mean, it's hard-earned money you want to go put in. It's better you talk to someone who shows that who can demonstrate that they have a clear head and they understand what you're trying to do. And even when you are testing, don't just test anyhow. Test with get counsel and use the right metrics to be able to test, because that really helps. Otherwise, you're gonna have a bunch of field tests that they didn't fail because they were supposed to fail. They failed because there were a few things that you didn't get right as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We do have a comment from Dolapo. He said, testing is an integral part of any IT implementation. How can one take advantage of testing in Nigeria? Can you recommend any industry or company that would be interested in testers?
So testing is one space that is actually really, really lacking. I would assure you that. But because there's not a lot of from the scratch building, like the development consulting space where you're kind of like building new apps, yeah, it's growing in Nigeria, but you can't compare it to like everywhere else around the world where people are building every day and all of that. But I assure you that even the consulting programs, that even the they build services that I do at my company, we are always in need of testers. So yeah, testing is something that if you create a program, an education program around testing as well, it's something that would have it to be consumed. As standards continue to play out, people who are building in Nigeria as well are realizing that the reason why they have very unreliable systems is because those have not been passed through the right test, infrastructure. So testing is definitely a big part, and I feel that it's not been explored. I don't even know if I know of any organization running, programs that are focused on just testing, and it's really critical. But also, if you look at testing from the standpoint of not just software development, if you look at testing from the standpoint of systems reliability, There are lots of opportunities there, oil and gas standpoint, from a fast-moving commodity goods standpoint, from a production and manufacturing line standpoint, where they need reliability testers and all of that. But yeah, for a software space, I think more people will need this. Many of the people who are building software projects in Nigeria don't even have enough budget, so they're still struggling to pay a very good UX developer, struggling to pay a very good backend developer, But I feel that that would not be for much longer. As standards continue to increase and as people continue to demand reliability on their systems, testers will continue to have value.
One more question I want to push is, you know how it works here, especially in all the Western world. We have the standard, we have the compliance, and everything will follow. Back home, how do we drive this? Because if you look at compliance alone, if you're looking at auditors, testers, and all of this role was created because there was a vacuum, and laws are, guiding these, and they're following it strictly. How can we create those kind of structure in Nigeria where if you're doing this, you'll be forced to put this in your budget and get experts to work on it, different areas, if you can just push that. You've been, around the government agencies and also like a Microsoft environment. So if you have any insight to that.
So anytime it is an international organization that is paying for that project, you have to put those things there.
Okay.
Or anytime,
how do we push such things in Nigeria? Like, how do we standardize things? If the government is not ready to do it, are we going to wait all the way for them? Or, the hubs, the people involved, can they come together and push that kind of narrative to the government for them to look into?
Yeah, so I was already responding to it, and I said the first thing is to look at who owns the project. Anytime it's an international organization, that's going to work. When it's the local government, you have a lot of work to do, and part of it will not be during that project. Part of it already run consultative sessions, town hall meetings, policy drives. These are things that will be done not just for that project you're currently doing, because if you are trying to put it in that project you're already doing, it's already dead on arrival. So I have a friend who came from Denmark and wanted to help the Ministry of Water Resources. He works in Denmark. He's been working in Denmark for years, and his responsibility is to make sure that all the water that goes from the place where the water is being pumped gets to all of the homes. And 98% of water that leaves, only 2% is missing. His work is to find how those 2% is missing. In Nigeria, when they pump water from the Federal Ministry of Water Resources and even in the States, when they pump 100%, less than 15% of the water gets to where it's supposed to get to. Like, there are leakages everywhere. So he came to Nigeria to be able to run some consultative stuff for them. And then he was trying to change how they do their things right on the spot. That's a failure. So I'm saying that some organization, and usually not individual businesses, must have a responsibility to set this kind of things you're talking about, these standard conversations in motion. And they are going to set it up usually from an industry standpoint. They're setting it up for others, not just for themselves. It's like you are telling the government about the standards in road construction. You are telling the government about standards in IT infrastructure for government, or you want to host a workshop on data privacy. It won't be for the project that you are trying to do for the government that you'll be doing that for. Most of the time, that's already a failure. So the best part is to be part of those kind of initiatives that are consistently making the environment, the business environment, the business landscape better before you even need to place a demand on that. So that's the way.
Do you think in Nigerian context, in relatively to other African contexts, do you think like the private organizations that are involved can drive this initiative? Like you're saying, I mean, look, Ade Olayemi was saying that the Standard Organization of Nigeria, even the SON, there's no standard. They don't yes. So how can we use this platform, drive it for them, and also help them implement and follow up on it? Is it possible?
Yeah, it actually is. Like you asked me to give examples, but I forgot to. At Microsoft was trying to sell Azure to the Nigerian government. You get Nigerian government to buy Microsoft Cloud Service. But there was some opposition from the government year on year about the fact that they don't want to store their very sensitive information on an American-owned cloud. It's not like they have their own cloud. They're just, as a matter of fact, at that time, the vice president's office was using Yahoo and Gmail. So they're like, You're already on the cloud. You just don't know.
Exactly.
Don't know. So what they did was that they had a couple of workshops on data classification in partnership with NIDA. And then they took that to the villa, took that to like the Nigerian Judicial Council. They held those workshops to be able to show them, HBI, MBI, all those data classifications and where all those data fell and what they can begin to do. And that they can decide to host an hybrid cloud that will host their very high business impact, information, and all the LBI, the low business impact, and the MBI can be stored with them. So that kind of organization has a policy arm. All of those things you see Facebook doing in Nigeria, all of those things are in preparation for products they want to sell later. All those friendship with the government, policy conversations, and all of that, that's private sector doing that. The question, however, is that if you are a small organization, how much budget do you have to be able to facilitate those kind of lobbying and those kind of things? And that's why the best way is to join organizations like the Chamber of Commerce's, the associations, unions, and hopefully those ones will do their job rather than just gathering together every year for annual general meeting and sharing rice, So that's really, really the work of those unions and those groups. But at my own level, what we're trying to do at our level for our companies is that, and for the states that we work with, is that we prime them. We prime them ahead of time. If I have a product I'm offering to a client 18 months from now, usually my pipeline is on the average about 11 months. That's about 3 quarters. Three quarters at least. That's my average pipeline. If I'm talking to a bank now, I don't expect the deal to close this quarter, next quarter, or the following quarter. I expect that. That's how it is in Nigeria. If it's here, they finish everything within the quarter, isn't it? But in Nigeria, it's that long. So you need to accept that. So in that period, I invite them to workshops. Sometimes I can sponsor them for trips, on that compliantly, for conferences, events. Like we have one now that we're doing sometimes next year where we're bringing some of them to the United States. We took some of them to Kenya the last time. So when you do that, you're preparing them for potentially what you're trying to do. And they sort of see you in a different light, but not every organization can do that investment, right from the onset, But as I've said, those are examples. I've seen Microsoft doing, Facebook is doing it, but these are organizations with deep pockets. To even keep the head of policy on payroll for a year, you know how much it costs, Yeah.
Okay, so that is all the time we have rather. It's been an insightful and once again educative, just like last week. Do you have any closing remarks? I think the closing remarks now will be, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, if they want to send you a message and say, hey, I'm interested in this, or I want to do this, how can you, more like words of wisdom can you give to me? Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, first of all, my email is SOLA, that's Sola at covenworks.com, COVEN works.com. That's my email. Hopefully they can help us put it on the console. So please feel free to drop me an email to ask any questions. Apart from this, I believe this is an ongoing conversation.
It is, yes.
It's something that continues to require bid from time to time and just to see the opportunities. Also, don't forget the 2 websites I mentioned, movemeback.com and the second one, Internations. Really facilitate your moving. Should you need any additional support as to creating a startup, building an MVP, creating your software, a drive, you already have a platform, you're trying to drive users to it and all of that, please shoot me an email and there may be 1 or 2 things that we can do to assist as well. Thank you once again for inviting me on the Nigerian space. I thoroughly enjoy the conversations. The questions are stimulating. And thanks to everyone who has been watching us.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shola. I think we'll still have you back sometime soon because this is ongoing, as you said, and I'm sure a lot of people are learning from it, even we ourselves here. Thank you so much for honoring our invite, and over to Mr. Ife.
Okay, to all our viewers and our listeners who will be listening to the podcast version, because we do also have a podcast that comes out later in the week. Like Mr. Shola said, his email is right on the screen. And for the listeners, it is Shola, SOLA at covenworks.com. And that is COVEN works.com. You can shoot him an email and just introduce yourself and say, I watched you on the Nigerian space, and it's going to be like a soft introduction for him to actually respond. He's a busy man, so I think that would be a warm introduction of yourself. Once again, like Mr. Constance has said, thank you very much for taking time out to speak with us. And viewers, you can go ahead and follow us on all our social media platforms. On Twitter, it is Nigerian_space. On Facebook, the Nigerian Space, and Twitter, the Nigerian Space, as you see on your screen. And also go ahead, remember to follow us on our YouTube page and set up, like, subscribe so that you get a notification anytime we're going live. Once again, thank you, and we hope you have a wonderful week ahead.
Thank you.